Well, welcome back. This is the conclusion of our blockchain conference. We have with us a prestigious group who's going to allow me to participate with them. So I wanted to first introduce our guest today. So my name is Dan Conway. I'm University of Arkansas. We're supposed to say fun facts, but I asked my children last night and they said there are no fun facts about you, Dad. So I decided I should make something up. So I made up a fun fact, but it's about Shivendu. He's one of the great Indian rap stars of all time. So I could. So we're going to talk about blockchain, artificial intelligence, analytics, how these things intersect with each other. So Professor Shivendu is leading the Indian national strategy on blockchain, one of the top highest researchers in America, a former colleague of mine and friend of mine. So I'm delighted to have him join us. And then Kiran Garimella, who is a fine violinist, as a true fun fact, was a former global CIO of General Electric division and a former VP of Software AG, is also now with the University of South Florida. So as we build up our alliances, I'm hopeful that we can get some formal relationship going with the blockchain folks at South Florida. So we're going to break this into three parts. I will do a few cases of why this is kind of an interesting space to be in. Professor Shivendu will talk about a framework and take my jumbled thoughts and give them some structure. And then Professor Garimella is probably built what we believe is the largest hyperledger application in use today, but very well connected with doing this in practice. So that's our agenda for today. So I will go first, and I would like to talk about these are some conversations that I've been in the last month. So as a motivation of why is blockchain and the intersection of AI and analytics, why is this an interesting area? So one of my calls this month talked about the problem they were having was robotics. So that we have robots now that replace your hips, replace your knees, that are all robotic. My sister-in-law had one done. And what they're building now is they would like the robot to ask for advice. So they built the machine learning repository, and they want to push some of that knowledge to the edge. And think of a robot replacing your hip and seeing something that it doesn't have great confidence in its own repository, sending those images off to a repository somewhere else where they get marked up. Think of it as augmented reality for robot vision. So somebody marks that up, superimposes an image on top of the image that the robot's seeing and sends it back. So we're building out the infrastructure with a group in Europe doing this. And how does blockchain come into that? Well, they're trying to figure out, they need an audit record, what questions were asked, what information was sent. And in a human world, we would have people watching this, and we would be able to maybe replay it in the event that something went badly, or the event something went really well and we want to share it. We would have humans kind of participating in that. And in an all digital transformed world, we would like to persist some of these activities. So that was kind of an interesting phone call. We have a special issue of applied analytics, informs applied analytics coming out of blockchain analytics that will focus a lot on what Paul Brody talked about, enterprise ERP, and how do you reconcile enterprise ERP with enterprise blockchain systems. Should analytics, or what role should analytics, anomaly detection, and so on have within that? So if you're interested in submitting to a journal on applied analytics, blockchain analytics, Garimella and I will be leading that. Intelligent audit is a topic that a lot of people wonder about. So intelligent audit means we would prefer, if in the case of a blockchain, smart contracts, if they could be written up that's self-audited. and the contracts themselves would be immutable, so nobody could go in and change it. But if a blockchain could real-time self-audit, and again, looking for anomalies or looking for trends, that would be a real useful thing. Then we could put those super smart auditor people into another form of productivity. On-chain analytics is something that I have some friends of mine who are quite interested in this. So think of, if you ever saw Flash Boys or read the book, how in New York they have fiber going through the middle of the room, just trying to get a little bit of computational edge on trading information so that people can buy and sell stocks just slightly faster than their neighbor can. In Bitcoin, you've got 10 minutes. You don't have to put fiber through the middle of your room. You can put it around through the ceiling and stuff like that, because you've got 10 minutes to observe a transaction that you might believe is market moving. When a whale comes in and does something, you've got 10 minutes that you can decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to tip this miner 50 extra bucks to get my transaction in front of this other transaction. And we see this form of gaming going on in on-chain analytics. So how is a chain behaving? What is expectation of behavior and so on? And finally, measurements of trust is another area that we see as some interesting research going on. The impact of decentralization. We say that decentralization is a valuable thing. How do we measure that? And as an example of this, friends of mine submitted a patent this week for a distributed ledger application that didn't have reconciliation like a normal blockchain would. Reconciliation is the act of actually throwing away information. So when we reconcile, we have multiple perspectives possibly, and one perspective wins and the rest of them are discarded. But occasionally that information that gets discarded, or the underlying reason why we're having different perspectives in the first place, has value to it. So a lot of AI applications start as rule-based, as a set of rules, and then we swap out the rules and we put in a more sophisticated decision architecture. I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I do think it's kind of funny that we have a blockchain center. When we're trying to look at something that's decentralized, we create a center to study something decentralized. So hopefully we can build out and include other universities so that we are truly decentralized ourselves, and we could have a decentralized or blockchain decenter of excellence. So I'm going to pass this over to Shivendu here and let him take all my random things that come to me in email and friends and journal things and give it some form of structure.
Thank you very much, Dan. Dan was with us at USF, and he's a great colleague. And only the other day I was speaking with my dean, and dean said that, okay, when is Dan coming back? I said, okay, you have to make him an offer. So Dan is still loved very much in our college, and we really miss you, Dan, because you were doing so many things and you were bringing so much energy to our department. But it's great. I'm so thankful to Dan and Kiran for putting me in this panel. What I'm going to talk about is basically a little less exciting than what Dan has talked about, a lot of new things that are happening. And what Kiran is going to talk about, the real world great example that he's implementing. I'm trying to give a framework. So when we talk about blockchain technologies and we talk about artificial intelligence and we talk about analytics, where is the convergence and how these technologies and applications built on those technologies can work synergistically. So I'll start with my understanding or our understanding of what is the problem with the current internet technologies. So definitely all these technologies are in some sense internet technologies because they all work in a network. And going back to Dan's last comment that there shouldn't be a center for blockchain, I think we should call it a network of blockchain. So basically, Arkansas should consider themselves as creating a network of people who are working in the research who are working on the applications, and bringing all that knowledge together so that it can benefit the entire network of developers, of application people, academics, industry people, policy people, law people, who, whatever are the people who are stakeholders in this technology. So I'll talk about what problems does it solve, or what problems doesn't solve, and then I'll go into the technology pillars of blockchain. I think most of it will be already known to you, but I'll just try to put some structure to it. And then we'll talk about value proposition. And in the last, I'll talk about how AI and analytics technologies kind of synergize with blockchain technology. Yes, next, please. Next, please. Thank you, Kiran. So when we look at the internet technologies, the current used internet technologies, they have brought about an enormous change, both in the society, in the world, in the business world, in the technology world, the life that humans live on this earth. And that is by creating a very powerful, efficient network of information exchange. That information exchange in itself is very, very useful, creates a lot of value for the society and businesses. But at the same time, it leaves the next frontier is still not significantly impacted, which is the value exchange. How do you exchange value? And the reason for that is, as we all know, is that the data has to be verified by trusted third parties, or has to be stored in places, kept in firewalls, so that people cannot mess with data. And then as the transactions take place, as the databases, new transactions come in the business world or in the real situations, then how do you know that which transaction needs to be written on the ledger, and which is the authentic transaction and which is not? And that brings in the whole role of trusted third parties, which still exists with all the internet technologies. And this brings in those internet technologies have created enormous cost benefits, but still the next frontier remains untouched. Next, please. Now, what blockchain technologies bring in the picture, and where the AI can actually enhance the efficiency or the value proposition of blockchain technologies, is broadly that you have a data security layer, where the way you organize your data is through all hashes and Merkle trees, etc. All those technologies which ensure that the data security, you don't need trusted third parties for data security. Similarly, through your distributed consensus protocols, you, to a great extent, eliminate the need for authentication and verification by the trusted third parties of the transaction. That means in the network, somehow network can come to a conclusion which are authentic transactions and put them in the ledger without a trusted third party certifying that this is a trusted transaction, or this is an authentic transaction. Now that again brings it new avenues for decentralization, value generation, efficiency in the systems, etc. So given that now we have a secure data structure and we have a trusted solution to authenticate and verify new transactions, now comes the opportunity, which is the value layer of blockchain, which is these smart contracts. That means now you can exchange value between nodes in this network without a trusted third party, because the need for trusted third party in terms of either data security or data verification, or in terms of verification of the transactions, is pretty much gone. So that's the structure, the way we conceptually look at the value, which are the layers of the blockchain technology which create that value. So this is a very high level view that we think kind of brings the clarity of how these technologies can be used and where the value lies and where the applications need to will be growing going forward. Next, please. Now, again, this we already know that this is a foundational technology. It is not a disruptive technology. And you know that the way these things are defined, that foundational technologies take much longer to kind of become mainstream. But once they become mainstream, they entirely change the way world operates. And they change the foundations of how we do things, both in the business world and in our life. And internet technologies are a great example of being foundational technology. While the disruptive technologies their impact is very quick, and they tend to be adopted not across all sectors of the economy or businesses or society, but only in certain segments. So disruptive technologies interrupt the current business models in certain areas, but not across all sectors or all domains. So to that extent, we do believe that blockchain is a foundational technology. The businesses, companies, as we have seen in the internet technologies, which were the first movers, which made those investments in late 80s, early 90s, are today in 90s are the companies which are leading that technological boom that took place afterwards. So that's the same way. If, our understanding is that blockchain technologies exhibit that nature of technology. And as I said in the very beginning, that network of information exchange, now we are going to move to the next level, which is the network of value exchange across nodes. Next, please. Now, again, how is that achieved? That value proposition is achieved is through verified origin of data. So that will make the data security issues go away to a great extent. And that will definitely lead to more efficiency, and the workflows around the business processes will become a lot more efficient because of the need of no third party to verify those transactions as the value moves across the network. Next, please. Now, where does the AI and blockchain fit into each other? Now, our understanding, and I think Kiran is going to talk more about it through an example in the real world, and that too, one of the largest applications of blockchain in creating a value exchange is that the integration of machine learning and AI and blockchain. These are two synergistic technologies. It's not one-way traffic. If the developers industry, which is in AI, they adopt blockchain, they will be benefited, and same is the case with technologists or technology companies which are focusing on blockchain. It can make AI more secure, coherent, understandable, more what we call the transparent AI. One of the big issues, if you talk to policymakers about AI, is that AI, how these decisions are made and why certain decisions are made and why certain things are done and not done using AI, that remains a kind of a area which is not very clear, and use of blockchain technologies can open up the what you call the black box of technologies and can make them more traceable. And on the other hand, by using AI into blockchain technologies, we can make the value exchange across the network using blockchain technologies a lot more efficient, and that will lead to gain there. I think I'll stop here, and I'll let you all have Kiran, who has the meat of the presentation, where he is going to talk about how these AI is actually being used in the real world. Kiran.
Thank you, Shivendu. So hi, everyone. So today, when Dan was sharing this fun fact about me being a violinist, I'm reminded of a childhood joke of mine. So today, by the most awesome coincidence, also happens to be Mahatma Gandhi's birthday today, anniversary celebrations. And when I was growing up as a kid, playing my violin, people would always joke and say, "Hey, what's the difference between Kiran and Mahatma Gandhi?" And the joke was that Kiran's a violinist and Mahatma Gandhi is a non-violinist. So I just thought I would, have some fun fact about that. But Professor Shivendu has an excellent point about capturing the various conceptual frameworks. I'm actually reminded of one of the most successful foundational technologies today that we unthinkingly and unhesitatingly use, and that is your relational databases. The relational databases today would not be where they are if it were not for the fact that there is a very strong mathematical and a very strong conceptual foundation behind them. And this is a constant effort in the academic community, and Professor Shivendu and Professor Conway, they're leading this in many different ways. And I'm very happy to be associated with them, obviously. I come from a practitioner world, even though I've been an academic in a past life. And today, one of the most exciting things that I'm doing is to look at applications for AI and blockchain in the capital markets. So in the capital markets, it's a huge, tremendously large and very important ecosystem out there. So if you look at the major capital markets around the world, they're basically divided into two large segments, the public and the private, which I'll talk about. But anywhere you turn to the media today, to the Financial Times or New York journals and whatnot, we are seeing some really eye-popping statistics out there about how large these numbers really are in terms of the equity markets, the derivative markets, the debt, the real estate, and the up and coming digital securities. And as the joke goes, it actually comes from politics. And the joke is that $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, and pretty soon you're talking about big money. And this is some really big eye-popping money. So by any stretch of imagination, give or take, 10 trillion here and there, it doesn't really matter. The scope of capital markets and securities is tremendous. So what's happening now is that in the public markets, there has been a very, very strong infrastructure support for many years. And this has been decades, if not over a century in the making. So if you look at the public markets today, they, in many, many ways, there is one source of credible truth in many markets. So, you or I or us, we can all pick up the phone and, type IBM into our, Google search or any of the applications, and IBM stock price and everything else would come up just like that. And nothing like that exists in the private markets. There is a whole lot of efficiency already built into the public markets that the private markets are still yet to reap the benefit of all this. I know that those of us who are in the public markets, we always think about, oh my God, how old legacy systems and we're so inefficient, right? But trust me, on the private markets, it's even more inefficient. Today, it takes me seconds to go onto my trading application and like a Charles Schwab or Thinkorswim platform or something like that, and in seconds I can get a confirmation, I can place a trade and get a confirmation of some of the larger securities, right? In the private markets, it takes weeks to authenticate and complete a regular sale transaction. The public markets also benefit from the fact that they are extremely well funded, they are large players, and they have a lot of investment available for enterprise systems and integration and worldwide connectivity and so on. And as I said, this has been going on for many, many decades and probably over a century now, on establishing exchanges and banking, SWIFT protocols, and online brokerages, and so many things. None of those things exist in the private markets. Yet, if you look at many different sources of research and statistics, private markets account for anywhere between 40 to 60% of the worldwide GDP. And just imagine the amount of value that we can unlock or help unlock in the private markets if we could actually provide that same level of mechanism. The challenge, of course, is that the private market participants are not incentivized or motivated by the same things that the public market participants are. Many of the private market people want to be private. They want to be in their little bailiwick and in their wheelhouse. They don't have global, megalomaniac types of ambitions. They want to be regional players, and they bring a lot of value to their communities who they know completely well. You look at the large public companies today. No one knows. I'm a shareholder for many of those companies. No one knows. The management doesn't know who I am. In the private markets, if I did invest in a private company, I would know the owners. I would know their kids when their birthdays are coming up, and vice versa, right? So the whole dynamic of how you engage in the private markets is very different. And for part of that reason, also because of the smaller players, you also don't have the tremendous investment available in the private markets to connect all these things up. So just imagine having those rails, that infrastructure to help. And to this day, that has not been possible. But today, that is possible for various reasons. And one of the biggest reasons, obviously, is the move from public to private, the privatization and the declining trend in the IPO public markets into more of the private markets, and crowdfunding regulations and regulation A+ and Reg D. A lot of these things are fueling the growth in the private market. So it's a very, very exciting space to be in, I can tell you that. I mean, we're in conversations every day about stuff like this. So what is the scope of all these public and private companies? If you take all the stock exchanges on the planet, there are about 80,000 of them. Public companies listed on all the various stock exchanges. In contrast, the private markets are 450 million of them around. Well, not all of them qualify for large, transactions. We get that, but nevertheless, these transactions are going on. And the pie chart is to scale. Otherwise, the public markets would not even show up on my pie chart. So it's a log scale. The ecosystem is worldwide. And what you see out there on the world map with a lot of those, nice graphics, is the deployment of the permissioned Hyperledger fabric that we have built with the capacity to process 10 billion transactions per year, which comes out to 318 transactions per second, which is an awesome thing when you think about it. And that is with a bare bones minimal configuration throughout. So we have nodes up in 23 countries. We have over 90,000 companies on the books, and a quickly soon to become 1,000 and more worth of partners, all of them highly regulated. And they all perform KYC, AML, and you can see that there are a whole number of ecosystem players out there, such as broker dealers and lawyers and custodians and transfer agents and so on and so on. The company that I work for and consult with is actually a SEC registered transfer agent for the private markets. Be that as it may, this is a very, very vibrant market. And the scope of the transactions that we see now are tremendous. Again, that's a log scale pie chart where we have about 10 billion worth of transaction capacity today in the now today, and we could actually grow up to like 4 trillion transactions per year in the private markets. And that is the leverage that you get from data. What you get from blockchain, it's a trust, right? Every piece of data, every piece of transaction is by verified parties. It is a complete end-to-end trusted lifecycle data. We can perform. Once you understand and trust the data, like Professor Shivendu pointed out, without the trust, nothing else really matters. And understanding this ecosystem through data, let data drive the understanding, the insights into how all these players behave and what can we do on the predictive analytics side, such as investment likelihoods, what is the effectiveness of various types of campaigns around the world, around sectors, around industries, so slice and dice would be absolutely fantastic. One of the most important things that we all always talk about is the whole governance issue. Because you've got cross-jurisdictional transactions where regulators do not monitor cross-jurisdiction as efficiently as anyone would think, there is a tremendous scope for consensus mechanisms and smart contracts to drive these cross-jurisdictional transactions, right? And in all these things, AI plays a huge role. Data plays a huge role. So what blockchain brings to data analytics is a question of a very comprehensive, trusted lifecycle data and transactions. And it exposes the market to so much scope. What AI and data analytics and machine learning bring to the blockchain in this particular space are tremendous transparency and insights into how this market behaves. There is no such, we don't have a Moody's or S&P, we don't have all these analyst firms today really driving insights into this market. That does not exist. And trust me, we have looked very hard about that. And to the little extent that they do exist, they're at a very high level, and we really cannot trust where the data is coming from. Some of that is self-reported, and you know what that actually means, right? So that's been an issue. So if we can actually help this entire private ecosystem market provide expert level guidance of regulatory compliance issues all over the planet with multiple regulatory regimes and rule-based dynamic consensus as things shift and change very rapidly, that is a tremendous opening up of these markets. That is a real dark continent that we have today in the capital markets, that if you can just bring them to light and create the trust and the efficiency, the whole markets would just explode. I mean, that is our vision. And it's a very exciting, space to be in, no doubt about it. So, we are really well set to, drive this completely and just revolutionize this. So in many ways, with this association with academicians such as Professor Conway and Professor Shivendu, and with a lot of leading players in the market, we are very excited about how much value that all these technologies can actually bring to the private capital markets. You're on mute, Dan. You sounded a lot better there.
One would think after 6 months of this, I would know where the mute button was. Yeah, very exciting. And you think of the sheer volume of potential transactions that your application has the capacity to handle and is handling lots and lots of companies right now. Way more than 20 people joined a small multi-chain. You've got 100,000 plus companies on this thing. Tell me, what's the difference of implementation? Some questions come in. It looks like you designed blockchain and AI together, and I know you have a book on that topic. Is that different than designing blockchain and then adding AI, or having AI and trying to fit blockchain in? Is there an advantage to kind of considering them concurrently at the design level?
I would absolutely say yes. It's a great question. And here is the reason why I think it's a great question, and that is the right way to go about it, thinking of both of them concurrently, is that blockchain is not a desktop application. It is not just an application for two people to work on. It's an ecosystem network application, which basically means that you've got multiple parties. You've got supply chains going across, multiple countries. There are many transactions. There is a general, I wouldn't say lack of trust, but a general, I really don't know who the other parties are kind of mechanism, which is where the intermediaries step in to create the trust. So in other words, because it's an ecosystem play, the scope for generating tremendous amount of data is very natural. And so when we design ecosystems and blockchain distributed technologies like this, why would we not right from the get-go think about where the data is coming from, what types of data we need, how we can best make use of that one? I think that's integral to designing of blockchain. So I would strongly advocate people who are building blockchains applications to seriously consider including the considerations of how to use this data from an analytic and machine learning perspective to bring better value.
Very nice. Professor Shivendu, if students were interested in this topic, and we see what a lot of schools see in that full-time blockchain jobs are not, if you're not an engineer, a coder, they're harder to come by. People seem to want architects who know something about blockchain or data scientists who know something about blockchain. But what would you recommend to students who are interested in both of these topics? What are the opportunities within the research? Or what would you suggest to someone who is maybe either a senior or someone currently in a master's program that wanted to go into this area?
Thank you, Dan. I think that's a great question. And here I teach in my master's program this year. That course is being taught by Kiran in our business analytics master's program, where this question comes up that, okay, so what are the job opportunities? What should I do? How do I get a job in blockchain? I think blockchain, like all technologies, one is the technology layer, hardcore technology layer, in which people who are doing computer science, who are in the engineering schools, who build new kind of consensus protocols, build new kinds of designs of these data storage and how blockchain technologies will be implemented in those things. That is one layer. And the other layer of jobs that open up is on the business layer. But in order for business layer to have good solutions suggested for businesses, they do need to have some understanding of blockchain technology, at least from where the value is coming, why blockchain technologies will improve things, what applications need to be built. So I think a broader understanding from the business perspective of these technologies is, I think, the core capability that companies look for when they hire people to develop applications on blockchain. That doesn't mean that they should not have any understanding of the coding. So like in our class, Dan, you have also taught these classes. We do have segments where they do some they write smart contracts, they build some applications in which they develop things on Hyperledger or in Ethereum. But more importantly, they are different from engineers because they can connect all that to a business and to a solution that the real companies face in terms of making their operations more efficient, just like as Kiran was mentioning. So I think for students, so if they are in the business school, then I think they do need to have kind of a two-pronged approach. One is to focus on the technology, understand it. At least if you don't know the nuts and bolts, you should know the overall architecture of that technology and what that technology does, and then how that creates value and how those applications can be built, having understanding of these. That's my understanding, but obviously Kiran can add because he has a vast experience. You have vast experience.
Thank you, Shivendu. I think that's right, and I mean you hit it right on the head. One of the things that we notice in the corporate world, and this is not just only blockchain or AI or machine learning. It's generally been the case as people go up the value chain from the pure shiny, I have got a shiny object, new technology, to more about how to add business value, I think that's where the gaps start emerging. And then there are people who actually have never touched the technology, and then they come from the other side, and now they want to make this technology do things that it is not designed to do. So one of the objectives that we have in academia is to make sure that the people who can touch and deal and code and deal with a shiny object, they know how to tease out the higher level value for that, because technologies change. Today it's Hyperledger of Fabric, tomorrow it's something else, right? But the basic concepts and the ideas behind that are going to be quite fungible and extensible to many, many other areas later. And similarly, the people who come from a non-technology perspective, we just need to teach them to say, you can't make a boat fly. Okay, so you have to understand the limitations of technology. So I think that is spot on.
Thank you. I'll add to it just a little bit. I think I would encourage students to take on this topic from an international lens. There are very interesting things going on in Israel and Poland, in Estonia, in China and India, of course. Don't look at this as a Western thing that benefits Western companies, because you'll kind of miss a lot of it. We have a different risk transfer infrastructure in our country. We have mature insurance, we have risk instruments, hedging instruments, $544 trillion worth of derivative opportunities. So we have very mature risk transfer and mechanisms like that. There are plenty of places in the world that are better at us than certain things, and maybe not as good in risk management and market opportunities in that space. But make this a topic of global perspective. And I think you'll get, it took me a long time really to figure out why anybody would create Bitcoin, and I was in it before it had any value. Why would you do something like that? But I was locked into thinking about it from a Western point of view, where, I have Zelle, I have Venmo, I have other mechanisms. And I have a bank that I trust, and I have a credit union that I trust. And if I need, I probably could call Kiran and have him wire me some money, I hope. But there are plenty of places around the world that have different infrastructures and different potential ecosystems. But I'd encourage you to look at this from the viewpoint of a global citizen. And I think you'll see opportunities that when we talk about a relational database, it has implicit organizational boundaries built into it. The permission structure, the reasons it was created and optimized are to enhance the performance of individual organizations. It's not an ecosystem technology. It's not created with that mentality. So I would encourage students to make sure that as you read more and look more, that you do it from a global citizen perspective, because I think you'll find extraordinarily interesting things that are going on in the world. I think we've kind of come to the end of our show. I'll again thank my friends and my colleagues here for participating in this. I think that there's a huge amount going on in this area. Like a lot of the talks that I was able to listen to in the last couple of days, I would like to know more about each one of them. But this is one that I do think we're going to see for the next 20 years. As we get better and our cost of entry gets lowered for computation because of cloud technologies, and our skill sets improve, I still think there's great opportunity for people to change the world. We were talking with IBM yesterday and their food trust, and they've laid out a platform for supply chain, and they started with mangoes from Mexico to the United States, and they've spread it out. I think Walmart's got 35 products, food products on a blockchain now. But just think about what you can do on top of that data. I would love to meet the people in Peru who grow these amazing blueberries, right? And the people in Chile who use their grapes to make the wine. I'd like to meet them. I would love for our class histories that we teach elementary schools instead of talking about World War I, World War II. I'd love them for talk about the day that the green grapes from Peru were sold in Arkansas. That would be a great event in history. And I could scan a barcode or QR code, and the blockchain would have all the data in it, and I could trace back, and exactly that's how we should learn geography, not through conflict, but through cooperation and collaboration. And there's such an opportunity with blockchain to change the whole nature of how we meet each other and how we learn culture. So look at this very broadly, look at these techniques very broadly, how AI can help enhance us, what we can do to make AI better, how we can improve. There should be nothing restricting your thinking on this. So thanks again to my friends, and I'm getting a digital hook that I need to go. So thanks everybody, and please contact us. The information is up there. Contact us if you'd like to hear more about these things going on. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks.